What up, what up, what up? Hey, everybody, hope you're doing well. Hey, I just want to let you know, I know everybody can't always support and donate to the podcast, but hey, if you can do a one-time donation, I put up a Buy Me a Coffee link in this description of the podcast. So if you go to the description of the podcast, it'll be at the bottom, and you can just go to that link, and you can buy me a cup of coffee, or two if you want. And that would just help support the show, and I can wake up a little bit more and bring you more info. So thanks for listening to the podcast. If you can donate, that would be much appreciated. And let's get on to the show. What up, what up, what up? Welcome back to Lockdown Universe, home of the bizarre, peculiar, and unheard of stories of UFO legend and paranormal lore. Welcome back, welcome back. Happy to be back. Hopefully you guys are doing excellent and taking care of yourselves. Today I've got a really interesting story of a woman who has had an alien abduction, also implanted with alien DNA, had 24 alien children, and lived to tell about it. So, who's this woman? Well, she comes to us from this interesting show that they have on Guy now called Into the Vortex, hosted by Mr. Jimmy Church, I believe it is. And her name, though, the important factor is her name is Geraldine Orozco. And she came forth just recently on this episode and told us about her amazing experience from childhood all the way up to being an adult. Now, what's awesome is she's really, really good at verbalizing her experience. Captures her experience very, very well. And what she talks about is the fact that she's not the only one that's had this happen to her. There's millions of people who have had alien abduction stories across not only the United States, but all over the world. So one of the things I thought was really interesting is she talks about what happened after she was abducted, and she stated that she saw a light outside of her house, and then was taken into the Silver Craft. The Silver Craft event happened October 13th, 2013. And she went to bed around 12 o'clock at night, and then she states that all of a sudden she woke up to an incredibly bright light in her room. All of the walls were covered in white light. And she actually picked up her phone and it said 3:33 in the morning. And she said that's the first time she paid attention to any of the consecutive numbers, which is interesting because that used to happen to me all the time. I'd wake up at 3:33 all the time, and we did a podcast about 3:33 being the devil's hour. If you haven't heard of that one, go back and listen to it. Very interesting, but they actually ended up doing a whole series on the devil's hour on television. So when this happens, she winds up outside of her house, and she states she begins to feel her body physically pull apart, and she starts to become lifted into the sky through her roof, and she states that she was in some sort of time space that was frozen. Nothing was moving around. Nothing in her area, nothing outside or inside was moving around. Now, this is really interesting because my own personal experience dealt with frozen people. Basically, nobody around could move. Their faces were all frozen in time, like they were in the middle of speaking a sentence and they were frozen in time. So I found that particularly interesting, and I went ahead and kept documenting it, but I thought it was a dream, actually. In all reality, I thought it was a dream, but now the further and further I investigated it, it seems like it might have actually been an abduction event when I was a kid. That's not the only one that I've had. I had a much more drastic one. That was pretty drastic because it was actually pretty terrifying. But I had a more drastic, or another experience when I was younger than that on my grandparents' farm. But I've gone through that before, so I'm not going to do that again. I'm going to go through this particular event, so I want to bring it up and share it with you. So back to Geraldine Orozco. She's flying in the sky. 2013, October 13th. She states the first of these aliens approaches her, and that she states that they kind of look like an ant being, almost 7 feet tall, non-human, but ant being, gray-colored body, and that's what's interesting is that they're not just like these tall grays. She said they had an exoskeleton-type body with gigantic eyes, dark and black, and she said that she was very terrified at that moment. Obviously, makes sense. The being raised its hand. She heard the word calm in her mind telepathically. When she heard that, all of the anxiety and fear left her body, and she was able to be transported without issue. See, they have this kind of control, right? They have this telepathy control over people. And she states that she felt like she was out of this dimension because of how the communication was. So she was brought on board, and she states she started to walk into a white light. And more, the light started to take the shape of a craft, an interdimensional kind of craft. And in this ship, she stated there was a substance that looked like plasma, and it kind of transformed into metal. And she stated that she felt like the ship was conscious and it was communicating with her, which I think is kind of interesting. So she walked into the craft, and it has hallways that turn to the right and to the left, and she was directed to the left. And as she walked inside, 5 beings began to move forward, and another being directed his hand, and she began to see a hologram. And in that hologram that appeared on top of the craft, on the interior top of the craft, began to show her some images. Some green undulating hills, a blue sky, and a picture of an obtuse glass building that she was directed into. By the time she had turned around, she saw 2 grays with her aunt in a nightgown walking in front of her, who was unconscious. Her hair was all shaggy, and she was in her nightgown. But they wanted to show her aunt. She couldn't scream out or reach to her, and then she immediately went behind the hologram. And this hologram then was removed, and she stated she was now inside the spacecraft, not looking at the hologram anymore. So then she stated she saw a control room that was like an oval console to the left and had incredible holographic structure to it, like a hologram with the universe of planets, and it showed her information about the rulers of those planets, which I think is like crazy fascinating because you never really hear about that. But she talks about the fact that it was so overwhelming that it took her a really long time to kind of process it and understand what was really happening to her. But she states as she's looking around, she can see through the craft, through into the stars and beyond, which is interesting. And the Greys were holding a blue prism with 8 layers on it. This is really interesting. So these Greys have a blue prism, and they're holding it, and she states that the ones that were showing her the hologram were maybe only about 4 to 5 feet tall at max, but there were other ones that were taller, right? 7 feet tall, and were like ant-like. So that's what we're talking about. Like, there's multiple kinds of different species that are working together, almost, it seems like, or maybe one's like subservient to the other. So it's pretty interesting in that regard. So as this story continues, she states that these layers of this device that they were brought out, the first layer went through their alien language and actually kind of like downloaded the information into her mind of how to understand the alien language. Then, in the second layer, she was taken to Pleiades, where she gained information about the Pleiades and how that planet was structured sociologically and environmentally. And then in the third layer, they showed her these 8 lights, and 4 of these beings manifested in front of her. So out of these lights, these 4 beings manifested in front of her, and one child, they were all children. One child had curly hair but large eyes. Okay, so clearly a hybrid. And she stated that as she started to look them in the eye, she recognized herself in the way that they move and in the way that they looked. She saw herself inside of the child, and it was obviously an incredible, powerful, meaningful, impactful event that happened to her. She stated she wanted to stay there with them. She didn't want to go back to Earth. She stated that she felt incredibly guilty, like a super irresponsible person that wasn't able to control or focus on her children, know where they were, and know their location. She stated that on board the craft, they kept showing her this holographic prism with 8 levels. And the third level, after returning from Pleiades, they showed her the 8 lights that then manifested into children, but only 4 of them were in front of her. So one of them was the one little boy, 2 girls, and then another boy that was older. And this was all on the craft. All on the craft. And this is like really interesting because so many women have this same problem. Have I don't know if it's a problem or not, but they have the same experience, right? Where they're implanted with a pregnancy, and then that pregnancy is taken from them early. What's interesting is she talks about the fact that these pregnancies require the aliens to place a container inside of them. And I don't mean like a Tupperware container. I'm talking about like a liner inside of them to allow the humans to carry this hybrid alien. Because what happened with our fine whistleblower here is that she actually became highly allergic to antibiotics that were given to her, because she became violently ill after these experiences. And they happened early on in her life. They happened in her teenage years, and and later on too. But they couldn't find out why she was becoming pregnant or having these issues of feeling sick, because she didn't have any boyfriends, and she was brought up in a very religious background, especially with school. And she didn't even know what was happening, because this was before she was even aware of, teenage and pubertyhood and everything like that. So no boyfriends, no anything. And when I say pregnant, I mean she didn't even know that she was pregnant. Okay, this realization didn't even happen until later on in 2013, when she had the experience where she went onto the ship and they showed her children, and she realized that she was pregnant back then when she was getting all these ailments and illnesses. So very, very fascinating. One of the times she went into the hospital, they stated that she had an amoeba that needed to be cured, and if she didn't get cured, she would die within 2 months. And so they were trying to figure out this amoeba situation, and later on she found out that it was because they were implanting her with these different liners and these different things that she actually got sick. And they fixed her. The aliens did. So that's really fascinating. There's so much to this, and like the way that she describes this, it's like so nonchalant. I mean, obviously, she's had to deal with this over time, but she's had some time to deal with it. But she told her family the story, and her family was super supportive. Even her dad told her that he had his own experiences, so she wasn't the only one. There was many people inside of her family that had the similar experience, not necessarily the pregnancy part, but the encounters part. So she's been an amazing whistleblower, and she's one of the most eloquent ones that I've ever come across. She talks about how the aliens splice the data, and the DNA data within us, and how the mitochondria carries our history, and they use that mitochondria to split and to work their DNA into our physical DNA. What I am happy to hear about is that she does have connections to other mothers who have had alien implants and alien, pregnancies that have been taken from them. So there is a support group, but that's it. I mean, there should be more, but at least there is some networks out there that she's familiar with and that she's engaged with. So I'm happy to hear about that. She seems to be a very stand-up woman. Seems to be able to have handled this very very well, or at least come to grips with it. And I definitely applaud her for everything she's been through and been able to maneuver through her life. So anyway, I wanted to share that with you guys. I hope you enjoyed the podcast. I can't believe I missed 2 whole days of podcasting. It seems like it blew by so fast. I was pretty busy, I guess, apparently, because I've been trying to put out 1 or 2 a day. So I will try to shoot out another one today, and I hope you guys are taking care of yourselves physically, spiritually, emotionally, following through on your hobbies and your goals and your dreams, and as always, continue to question the universe around you. Till next time, guys, take care, and Lockdown Universe out.